Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Good morning and welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast. I am here today with Wally Olson, and I am excited to have a conversation, which is a topic that we both enjoy. We are going to talk today about cow depreciation and cow longevity. And Wally, I'm going to give you free rein here to talk about this and take this wherever you want to go. But good morning. Nice to see you.
Good morning. To me, one of the most misunderstood parts of the cow-calf business, which it hurts me to say cow-calf business because you got cow business and then you got calf business. And what we're going to talk about is profiting from the change in your inventory value. That's what we're talking about here. And the reason nobody does this is nobody tracks their inventory value. And when you start tracking your inventory value, you will discover that you can really change the profitability of your cow herd. And one of the biggest paradigms in cow business is that a cow can't pay for herself till she's 8 years old. Could not understand this. And I was fortunate to see an article and I asked people to show me the numbers, and nobody, when you ask them to show the numbers, they just disappear in the debate. And so finally, I read an article, and how they came up with this is they use straight line depreciation, and the cow depreciation is not a straight line. That's basically for tax and pickups and stuff. And so what they do is they come up with the useful life of a cow, and then they take what the cow costs minus what her salvage value is and divide it by the number of years. And then they start attaching it to a first calf heifer, and then a second calf, third calf on up. And usually it's up to about a 5-year-old cow. And then after that, they say these cows don't have any more depreciation. And so these older cows all of a sudden become profitable. And that isn't the way this business works. And the way the business really works is to have depreciation, you have to have appreciation. So most of the time, if you look, a heifer calf, weaned heifer calf will appreciate up to a yearling heifer and then a bred heifer. And then so they will hold their value till they're 4 or 5 years old or 6, and then they start losing inventory value, and they just go down till they come down to cull cow price. And if you compare a weaned heifer calf and a cull cow, it usually is basically the same, within $100 or so. And so that's where the cow calf business is break even, is we do not capture the appreciation of the female. And as long as you're using straight line depreciation, you can show how those older cows are more profitable, but they aren't. And they just wreck any hopes of profitability, in my humble opinion. It's just devastating. And I do not understand why such learned men cannot understand this. Most of the reason is they are not in the business. And like I said, I'm on my soapbox now, and Katie barred the door. And I know it's a sin to sell a 5-year-old cow. She's just got everything coming for her and all the above. And the thing is, the reasons I was people give me for longevity is indigenous knowledge of the ranch, if you need that. And to me, if a heifer calf is born on the ranch, if she breeds and has a calf and raises a calf on the ranch, and she breeds again and raises another calf on the ranch, that cow has 3 and 4 years old, has 99% of the indigenous knowledge that an 11 or 12 or 13-year-old cow has. So that keeping cows forever to get indigenous knowledge has no value to me. And then the next thing is, it's perceived that more calves a cow has, the more profitable she is. And with the loss of inventory value, to balance that out, you've got to be taking percentages of that calf is being lost in her value. So you put the carry costs and then the loss in value together, and those calves out of those 7, 8, 9-year-old cows where depreciation's really eating you up. Just devastating. And then another on a financial side is you've got to have turnover in a business. People don't understand the importance of turnover. And you keeping these old cows forever, you don't have any turnover. To me, if you can, depending on your cost structure, keep your heifer calves and run them up to the most appreciated value and then sell them. And by doing that, what I'm interested in is after-tax dollars. And with using the capital gains and not having self-employment tax is really a great way to build wealth. And people don't understand or take advantage of that. To me, one of the biggest problems in agriculture is we truly believe that we cannot be profitable, and consequently, we are not profitable. And all this is rainfall, sunshine, and management can be very profitable, in my humble opinion. And that is my rant on cow longevity and depreciation.
Okay, I want to unpack a couple of things that you said there. First, I want to make a very important point. When we say appreciation and depreciation, you're talking about real changes in market value of a cow through her life. Yeah. So we're not necessarily talking about when the market is changing, like it currently is, but which it also does. But we are talking about the fact that generally, if we take a snapshot in time, a prime of her life cow is worth more than both a heifer calf and a cull cow. So this is the part that gets really interesting to me, because just as you mentioned, why are smart people get this so wrong? This is a place where, and we've all heard the saying, there's lies, damn lies, and then there's accounting. And I think this is a place where the straight line model for depreciation is what is used in the world of tax, and it does not resemble what happens in reality. And that gives us two things. One, it gives us an opportunity to really be led astray, because if you actually believe the IRS model of how cow value changes, you are leading yourself astray in your business and in your thinking. But it also gives us tremendous profit opportunity, right? Where because of that mismatch, we are able to use the tax rules and we're able to use the reality of the cow market to create additional opportunity for advantage, right? So let's talk about that straight line model. I want you to describe your what I'm now calling the cowbell curve, which I realize is not a statistical bell curve, but it is what happens through a cow's life. So again, just unpack that a little and let's compare it again to the straight line depreciation. So if we start with a 500-pound heifer calf, give me the process. How does she change in value through her life?
Basically, to me, on a 500-pound heifer calf, if you look at them and get the relationships of what you have in your herd, she is the most undervalued animal that you have. And one of the most overvalued animal you have is a middle-aged cow. And you always have to do these relationships. You cannot have a recipe. You just need to understand the relationships, how they go up in value and then how they drop off in value.
And we don't have a recipe, but that is a pattern that we see again and again, right? I balance this back and forth between it is not a recipe, and yet that pattern shows up again and again. And one would be stupid to not acknowledge that is highly repeated, right? How many years out of 10 is a 500-pound, a good quality 500-pound heifer overvalued in October?
And one of the basically the only time that a heifer calf is really overvalued to a young bred cow is when you're in a drought. And that's when basically the bred cow's value drops to cull price. And the cull price and the heifer calf price is basically the same. That is one of the only times that I know of it happens.
Yeah. And I think heifers tend to be, if they're going to be overvalued in their life, they also can be overvalued when they are right at a feeder weight, right?
Correct. So
they may not be overvalued, but they probably have a fairly high relative value at that time. And so if you move her from a 500-pound wean calf in October to a 750-pound feeder calf in July, August, September, you have usually gone from an undervalued animal to an overvalued. Right. And if that is your cull animal from a breeding program, your quote-unquote cull really doesn't lose a lot of value depending on the market, right?
That's right.
Okay. And so you could profitably run her and not get the desired outcome. Let's say you put a bull with them, your open still can be profitable. Whereas when we run a 5-year-old cow or a 6-year-old cow and she doesn't get pregnant, now our cull cow is probably not profitable.
That's correct.
Even at today's fat cow or cull cow prices, which are at $1.40-ish this summer, even at that price, you're probably not profitable selling your cow by the pound at 5 or 6 years old. Is that fair?
Compared to the relationships of the other animals.
Correct.
And the one thing you need to understand, there's appreciation and depreciation going on, and that is a change in the relationships of the animals in your herd. And then you have inflation and deflation, and that is the market going up and going down. So when you couple inflation with appreciation, you can get some tremendous gains in herd value, and you've got to learn how to capitalize on that. And the way you do it is you look at the relationships of your inventory and you sell what's overvalued and you keep what's undervalued, and it'll work out very well for you.
Okay, so let's talk about you mentioned right out the gate, you mentioned the idea that it's not a cow-calf business, it's a cow business and it's a calf business. Do you want to explain that just a little more? Well, and I'd really like you to focus on the cow business side, because I think most of us understand the calf business.
Basically, when you talk about being in the cow-calf business, on the calf side, since I truly believe that you should keep every weaned heifer calf because they are most of the time undervalued. They're not always, but on the steer side, to me, you want to be getting rid of the steers because you're going to need cash flow in your ranch. Steers are usually overvalued to the heifer calf. That is all that's in your calf side of your cow calf business is a steer, and just sell them. And then you go to focus on building wealth in the cow side, which is taking these heifer calves, bringing them up in value and capitalizing them when they are overvalued and building wealth after tax. What you need to be focusing on is after tax dollars. You don't want to be focusing so much on profit. It's after tax dollars. So you look at that. Just people will talk about how terminal cross cow herding and stuff. And I think where they stop before they get to after tax dollars, they stop at, okay, we're profitable, but they're not capturing the value where you really build wealth in the cow-calf business. It's worked well for me. And
just for the record, I've looked at Wally's financials and it works.
It worked well.
We've looked at the financials of a number of people who've followed this strategy and it works incredibly well. Over and over again, one of the reasons I like to talk about this is because, I'll just for the record, it took Wally probably 5 years to convince me that this was the right thing to do. We've debated this since around 2010, I think. And it was all of a sudden in the teens, the 2000 teens, I had this epiphany that I had been doing it wrong, that I had made a terrible mistake by really selling heifers repeatedly in the fall, thinking I was doing the right thing. We'll talk more about that maybe later. But okay, so the idea being, again, that when you're talking about after-tax wealth, and the reason this comes up here is that selling calves, that is an ordinary income, treated very differently in our tax code from selling cows, which, if treated appropriately, are a fixed asset and are taxed under capital gains rules. Okay, tax capital gains rules include there are different rates. The rules are a little different. They are treated differently as income. So when we are in the cow business, as you're talking about it, our main products for sale include steer calves, which would be ordinary income. They include a prime of her life bred cow when she is at the peak of her relative value. And then your sale products would also include your open heifers. Now, when you talk about keeping all of your heifers, are you trying to get all of them pregnant?
No.
Okay. How are you doing that?
The biggest thing is, and this is going into another adventure here, is when you keep all your heifers and let the bull decide which ones are going to be the replacement heifers. Because all we're interested in the cow-calf business is reproduction. And that's what drives this whole thing is reproduction. Be hard on your heifers that you're breeding for the first time put pressure on them. And the way I do it is run them profitably as a feeder heifer, and then let the bull pick up the ones that will be the good cows. And those heifers, you will not have the trouble getting them bred back for the second calf. Whereas if you really, as the learned people say, to develop your heifers and this, then you have such a high fallout to get them bred for their second calf. And put pressure on them, and if you will take care of many problems.
We are talking about effectively applying sell-by principles within a breeding herd. And you've said a few things earlier that I want to flesh out a little more. We've already talked about depreciation and appreciation. One of the things you mentioned was you talked about being hard on heifers. And I want to make sure we talk specifically about what that means, because I think there are some misconceptions about how we get the heifers that we want. So would you expand on that just a little bit? Are you talking, are we starving a profit into heifers?
When you're talking about being hard on heifers, what I'm talking about is I should change that word. You should be correct on developing heifers. And there's three ways of developing heifers. There's one, you can put them in these heifer development yards and get 99% of them bred. And you bring them home to the ranch, you calve them out, and then the next fall you discover that 50% of those heifers are open, which is, for a cow trader like me, is just great. But what I'm talking about is properly developed heifers, because you can go to the other side and we're not going to have no inputs in these heifers. That is as bad as the other side, because you end up with lots of open, but
and very small heifers, yeah. Right?
And so properly developed heifers, to me, starts out, it's when you calve and you have your system calving later, so you can give them great grass and develop them that way. You have them staged so they can graze to their maximum. What we're doing is the timing more. And like I said, you have a heifer calf that you winter through the winter, maybe on the cow, and she comes out winter and she goes on great summer grass, and she is at her peak. And if you're calving later, you may be breeding these heifers in August or whenever, and you may want to supplement a little bit of degradable protein to them to flush them a little bit. There's very cheap ways to do that, but you come up with a very good product. And next thing is, you need to have your genetics set up so it's easy. And what I'm talking about there, you have calvinees bred into these. The heifers, the bulls you use. Another paradigm is that a big calf is more profitable. And you will find that most of the time, after you've passed 500 pounds, the value again goes down to a point where you can probably never recover that again. So what you need to do, so why have high EPDs for weaning weight? Just have very moderate milk in them. And I don't want to say low growth, but just we're focused. The cow-calf business is a reproduction business, is where the profit's made, not in the pounds.
And when you say reproduction, you mean fertility. The ability to get pregnant.
Yeah,
is pregnant. What we're really selecting for.
Yes, and get pregnant again and again.
Love it. And then to bring in a live calf.
Yep.
That lives until we ship it.
Yep.
Or until we wean it.
That's correct. And that makes it easy. If you're calving in sync with nature, whatever that is for wherever you are, you have to figure that out. But you get rid of the calving barns and the scours, and you can just make the cow-calf business easy.
So I hear people often say, man, I just don't want to calve I already calved 30 heifers. I don't want to calve 150 heifers. That sounds terrible. What you're saying is that it won't work if you're doing it that way, right?
That's
you've got to make that heifer situation good for you and good for the heifer.
And you just got to, like I tell people, if you want to get rid of your heifer calving problems, just don't go check them. When half the heifers die, you will adjust the animals, what you breed to, and you will adjust to a point where you just can calve heifers. They don't need any assistance. Yeah, it just amazes me how we screwed up the cow business. When we got a problem, we go the wrong way. we have calving problems. So we build calving barns, and then we have disease problems rather than let's cut back on the performance and get live calves that are out there on green grass. Just my humble opinion.
I've been thinking about heifers a lot like I think about my kids. So I've got kids that are 5, 3, and 2 right now, and obviously at home. And there are lots of ways I can prop them up and make them successful. But what I probably need to do is allow them to do some failing on their own so that they learn. We want to keep them. We want to keep them out of the highway.
Yeah.
But if they need to touch something hot that won't hurt them, probably need to let them do that so they learn the lesson.
The greatest thing you teach your children is how to get it back up after they've been knocked down.
Very good. Okay. And again, the idea here is that if you are running a good quality feeder program that is profitable and then only skimming the pregnants off, if you will, then this program works both ways. So you do not have to have anything pregnant for the program to be profitable. But if you can get things pregnant, it makes the program significantly more profitable. Okay. Now, the other thing that we think here is let's talk just a little bit about wintering. So depending on what part of the country we're in, and again, we're in Wyoming now. I live in Wyoming. You live in Northeast Oklahoma. When we are wintering a heifer through, you mentioned backgrounding them. Are we roughing them through? Are we keeping them on a reasonable plane of nutrition and a steady rate of gain? What are we doing there?
Like I said, you need to, it goes back to what your goal is to make a profitable feeder heifer. And so, yes, you can, depending on where you're at, you can grow them at a moderate rate to go back to grass where they'll still gain.
And by moderate, we're talking 1.5 to 2 pounds?
I would say a pound, depending on your cost, 1.5 pounds.
Okay.
Because on that summer grass flush, you will get some compensatory gain, and life's good.
And you mentioned, for example, if we were breeding, and we're not recommending breeding for a May calving heifer, but if we are doing that, that means we'd be turning bulls in late July, early August time. So that heifer would have, in theory, May, June, July on grass before she ever sees a bull.
Yep.
So she doesn't have to finish winter at her target breeding weight.
That's correct. And so you compare that, in that amount of time, she should gain about 200 pounds.
Yep.
So Shazam, you can
start the season with a small heifer.
You can start out with a 500-pound heifer.
Yeah. Get where you need to be by the time she's with a bull.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And there are probably all kinds of, I don't know a lot of the specifics, but I'm sure there are a tremendous number of nutritional aids that are happening in the development of that heifer to help her cycle.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me also about a target pregnancy rate for that a heifer developed in that system. Now, you mentioned getting all of them bred, but what are you really shooting for?
To me, if you could get 60% of the heifers bred, 60% to me would be a good number. That will maintain your cow herd. And like I said, there will be years that you will get lots more bred. There will be years that you won't get as many bred. But as long as they're profitable as feeders,
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Okay. And you may, like I said, to make this work, you got to get your genetics correct. And you cannot take high performance, high growth genetics and make this work.
It's got to be, the focus has got to be fertility.
Fertility.
Okay.
And those are moderate framed, easy fleshing.
And this is a place, I think, where there is some confusion because, of course, animal scientists tell us over and over again that fertility is like the least heritable trait you can work on. But most of what you're talking about is metabolism, right?
That's
we are
right.
talking about energy efficiency.
Yeah.
We are talking about a type of cow that is a good doer on the forage that you have available, right?
And she can get fat.
Yeah. She get fat and bring home a calf.
Bring home a calf.
All right, good. Let's talk about one last part of this. If we are a late calver, so let's say I live in this part of the world and I calve in June, those bred cows tend to be severely discounted compared to a March calver. Do I want to do anything later in that cow's life to back up that breeding date so that I can sell her? Help me through that a little bit. I don't see it as strongly anymore, but I used to see it Torrington, about $100 per month drop in bred cow price. If we went around the first of the year and you said March was peak, and maybe now it's late March, but it used to be right in March was the peak of cow value, and then about $100 drop for each month after that she was expected to calve. Do you worry about that? Do you make any adjustments? Do you breed your sale cows differently than your regular cows?
That depends.
Okay.
And one thing, You have to understand that the people that are interested in buying correct calving date cows, I'm not going to say late calving, I'm going to say correct.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And this can be 180 degrees different depending on where you are in the country or in the world, right?
People that are interested in buying those cows will not be at Torrington Livestock Auction when the March calvers are selling at such a premium. They just aren't there. So you take a big discount. But if you watch Torrington sale results and you carry that cow and sell her in March and April, when the people that are interested in buying the correct calving date cows, they will be there and they sell very well. You just got to understand that you've got to carry them to where they need to be. And people say, God, then you got to winter them. If you look at the cost of developing those March calving heifers, you got front end costs in them to get them growed up big enough to breed that it balances out. And then if you want to move your cows up, if you sort off bred cows and put a bull with them, you will move 60 to 70% of them up at least one trimester cycle.
21 day cycle.
21 days or more.
Okay. Yeah.
It is amazing how much, but then you've got to address, now we've got another set of cows out there. So is it worth it? It's probably better off just to carry them to when somebody wants them and sell them in rather than start fooling around with Mother Nature and stuff.
So this is a place, what you're describing is it very well may be that we don't preg check those cows in the fall and then ship them right away. We preg check them, we hold on to them, and then we might sell them later in the spring. So, and I'm going to say later in the winter, maybe is a better March, April time. You might sell a May or a June calving cow. Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good. There's a little something more we probably ought to talk about another time about knowing your customer and getting cattle in front of the right people, but we can save that for another day.
That's another day.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Thank you for joining us. I want to also mention, Wally, you run a school where you actually teach people how to do this?
Correct.
How do I find out more about your school?
Olson Ranch, LLC.
Okay, Olson is Olson.
Yep.
The Swedish spelling.
Yep, Swedish spelling.
And you offer classes, generally you do 2 or 3 of them in the fall and then 2 or 3 of them after the first of the year. Great. And you've got one on the schedule in September where you and Steve Campbell and Don Notto.
We're going to be there talking about the stocker business.
Very good. So you're going to do nutrition with Steve Campbell and stockmanship with Don and marketing with Wally Olson. Very good. Those are wonderful schools. I've had the opportunity to attend a bajillion of them. And every time I go, I learn something. Every time I go, I meet really good people. You also teach schools online. Is that correct?
You can only attend an online school. It is worth it. But an in-person school to meet other people is way more valuable.
Very good. And you do that through ranching.fyi.
Correct.
Okay. And then the one last thing I want to mention, Wally, in many of our conversations, and I think it was in a prior one, you mentioned Mike Morgan had gotten struck by lightning down in Walden. You and I are both involved a little bit with the His Calvy Foundation. And I just want to give a shout out to them. If you get a chance, look up their website. It's His Calvy, spelled CAVY foundation.org. They're doing some great work helping people that are having medical crises. And both of us are pretty supportive of that effort and would like to see them able to do more. And that takes more help from more people. So thank you, Wally, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And we will talk more. Thank you for tuning into the Ranchonomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.